Push that. Just waiting for YouTube to pick up. Right. And we're there. Perfect. All right. Welcome to the Sweet Science of Fighting podcast, the second one today. So a treat for everyone. But welcome, Dave. I'm glad you could make it on. We couldn't do it last week, but we managed to find a time today. But do you want to maybe give a brief introduction about yourself, and then we'll go straight into it?
Yeah, my name's Dave. I run a company called Integrated Training, and I work with people around stress resilience, improving their mental game and ability to be able to focus under pressure, under high stress, high pressure moments. And we teach them, what stress and pressure looks like physically and mentally, how it manifests, and how some of those patterns of behaviour, some of these ingrained patterns of behaviour can come out in these hardwired patterns and stress and pressure moments. So yeah, really, we're just working to improve people's mental game right across from sports or corporate to mums and dads, anyone that's looking to optimize health and performance.
Yeah, no, nice. And I think I actually came across a lot of your stuff through Israel Adesanya's, it must have been his vlogs or UFC Countdown or whichever it was, doing some breath work in the pool. And I think it would be interesting to dive into some of the methodology around there, I guess more of the what, why, when, how. So maybe let's start with this idea of using breath work or doing some of this pool breathing. Why are you doing it, and what purpose does it serve for you in terms of, I guess, the holistic approach to performance?
Yeah, the breathing is really like in any performance. It is the foundation, right? Because oxygen is the currency of energy, so you want your breathing to be efficient. And at the sort of foundational level of this is improving your breathing mechanics. So getting really good access to your diaphragm, good diaphragmatic excursion, so good diaphragmatic movement, strengthen your diaphragm, strengthen the primary muscles of breathing, and also match the intensity of your breathing to the intensity of the exercise. And this has a massive ripple-on effect into endurance, power production, mental focus, and your ability to recover fast. And the other sort of part of this is that your breathing is indirectly linked to your nervous system. So you can use your breathing to elicit a calm state, a calm focused state, by doing specific breathing cadences, and in particular prolonging the exhale phase of the breathing. And that's really important because if we look at like athletic performance, a lot of these athletes are overtraining, or there's a mismatch between the training load and recovery. And so having sort of protocols where you actively put yourself into a calm state is really important, especially throughout the day. It's easy to get stuck in that upregulated state, and how we adapt to that is often detrimental to performance.
Yeah, actually, I talked about this, I don't know how many podcasts ago. I kind of first got introduced to some of that breathing around using breathing to kind of charge up, and then also breathing to downregulate when I was working in Romania. And we had someone come across and use various breathing modalities for, yeah, you could use it pre-game to charge yourself up if you needed to, or you can use it to bring yourself down. But do you want to maybe dive into maybe a couple of just examples of how you would use that breathing, maybe even just throughout the day, and then maybe some examples before, after, during training that someone could potentially use to change state of readiness?
Yeah, so most people find it relatively easy to switch on, and it's the opposite. They find it more difficult to elicit a calm state. What was your
just some examples around just some examples around, I guess, breathing, I guess, protocols that someone could implement to kind of bring themselves down or up?
Yeah, the first thing is, again, like we breathe 20 to 30,000 times a day, so you want to make sure that you're breathing in a mechanically efficient way. And what we see very often, and this is in elite level athletes as well, is that their breathing mechanics are off. And so they're taking that into a dynamic situation, adding load to it. And look, if you just think about two athletes, same level of intensity, one is breathing at 40 times a minute and the other is breathing at 20 times a minute. one breathing at 20 times a minute is going to have much better endurance, much better mental
Mm-hmm.
focus, and a better ability to recover in between rounds, or even if we take fighting when you're fighting. And so, so the first part is, really we sort of program around getting these guys and girls better access to the diaphragm and strengthening it. Then we can start introducing protocols like cadence breathing. Now, this is just when you assign different numbers to the inhale, hold, exhale, and hold part of the breathing cycle. And what we can do is we can focus on a exhale phase that is longer than an inhale phase.
Mm-hmm.
And what this does over time, we do this over 20 minutes. So we have this 20-minute breathing flow where these athletes lie down and they follow this breathing cadence. And by prolonging the exhale, it doesn't really matter if your mind wanders off and you're a bit agitated and you're finding it hard to switch off. If you can just focus on following this breathing cadence and prolonging your exhale, that will create a calm state in your body. And the reason for that is when you prolong the exhale phase of the breathing cycle, it creates a more parasympathetic tone. And that's the division of your autonomic nervous system that is associated with rest and recovery. And it's really simple. A common cadence that we use is a 6-6-8-4. 6 in, 6 hold, 8 out, 4 hold. And there's a whole lot of nuance in there around how to get relaxed. And it is easy, but it's also difficult. If you take someone who's been living their life in an upregulated state, like just constantly on the go, and then you put them in a quiet place and tell them, to try and focus on this breathing or to try and their body, it can be actually kind of agitating. And so it all depends on the person. For some people, you actually need to create some controlled stress in order to calm them. So sometimes we will get them doing like a faster breathing pattern that would elicit stress. They control it, and then we would go into a calming breathing pattern. This is like accessible to anyone, man. It's so easy, and there's so many great. It's a great protocol to implement, say, after training. When you're in an upregulated state, lie down. How quickly can you shift into a calm state? That's training your nervous system. That's training your ability to better manage your energy output.
Yeah.
And then you take that into dynamic situations, all right?
No, I love that.
Yeah, the pool is just like a place where we focus on a bunch of things. One is we focus on recovery. But the other thing is we focus on creating stress and seeing people's patterns of behavior when they're in stressful situations. And these are hardwired patterns, and they will always come out in stress and pressure moments. And you can see those in the pool. And then you would just debrief that, and it makes people much more aware of sort of what they're doing, and then take that and apply it into sport or life or whatever.
Nice. And before we dive further down into that, I wanted to come back a little bit into the breathing mechanics you talked about. I know it might be a little difficult to kind of just explain over audio or for people listening, but I guess you mentioned obviously people live in an upregulated state with their breathing and things like that. So what are you looking for with someone who is, say, upregulated often and they're breathing a certain way? And then how are you trying to get them to breathe to, I guess, for lack of a better term, breathe properly?
The first thing I want to say is like this stuff is really the underlying mechanisms are quite in depth around breathing, but the actual exercises are very simple, and they should be. And I think in this breathing space, we like to sort of make it quite mysterious and like it's convoluted. It's not. It's very simple. And the pattern that we see very often is what we call an accessory muscle breathing pattern, which is where the athlete or the person shifts their breathing into their upper chest, shoulders, neck muscles. These are the accessory muscles of breathing that you want to be using when you're in sort of high intensity workload. And they will shift up into that type of breathing, even at rest. This can be a pattern, but normally during sort of even light exercise. And often they're not even aware of it, and they're not aware of how that impacts their performance. And so first of all, it's about awareness. It's about even just having a visual representation of what the diaphragm looks like how it moves, what happens when you inhale. When you inhale, the diaphragm drops down into the abdominal cavity and pushes the rib cage laterally. So you have to, in order to like be able to improve your breathing mechanics, you have to have good visual representation. That's that like mind muscle connection, right? Most people don't even have a visual representation of their diaphragm. And when we think of breathing, we often think of the lungs as being up here into the upper chest. Actually, the densest part of lung tissue is in your lower, in your mid back, where your posterior rib cage is. And so what we're looking for is 360 degrees of expansion of the rib cage, front, side, and back. You think of like a dog lying on its side or a cat. How do they breathe at rest? They don't breathe vertically, they breathe laterally. And so you can just do this test yourself, take 3 of your deepest breaths. And if you notice you're shifting into like a vertical pattern of breathing where your shoulders are lifting up and your chest is lifting up, that is very shallow. And then you can just put your hands on your side by your rib cage, just below your chest, and you can focus on inhaling through your nose, relaxing the chest and shoulders, and expanding laterally. And this can be incredibly difficult for someone who has ingrained neural pattern of breathing through to their upper chest.
Yeah. No, I can
So
imagine.
actually, it's like you can take someone that comes into the gym, even an elite level athlete, and their breathing mechanics are all off, and you just make them aware, show them some simple exercises, program them. You have to do something 1,000 times for it to become autonomic. And you can change the way that someone breathes, which again has a massive effect on endurance, mental focus, recovery, and just overall health.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because it reminds me of, when I was growing up, I used to play a musical instrument, and you actually you get taught exactly that, how to breathe, because obviously when you're playing an instrument, you got to be able to bring in enough air to be able to play. So exactly that 360 expansion, the diaphragm, all of that. So it's interesting parallels between that and I guess sports breathing.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of confusion around breathing because of the terminology. Things like breathe into your belly. If I say to you, breathe into your belly, what does that mean for you? What are you going to do?
Push my stomach out.
Yeah, all you're going to do is when you breathe in, you're going to push your stomach out. That's just pushing your stomach in and out. It's probably the most flawed cue for breathing.
Yeah.
When you breathe in, the diaphragm drops down, increases intra-abdominal pressure, so the pressure inside your abdominal cavity, because that's a closed cavity. And as you breathe in and the diaphragm moves down, the abdominal organs push out a little bit. And that's where we get this stomach extension on the inhale, but it shouldn't be a focus. The focus should be on breathing in through your nose, relaxing your chest and shoulders, and expanding laterally. The focus should be on having a good mind-muscle connection through to your diaphragm. Again, what does it look like when I inhale? What does it look like when I exhale? Where does it sit in my body? All these things are so important.
Yeah.
And we have specific exercises that target, just like, if you're building your quad strength, you would target different parts of your quad. We have the same exercises that target the posterior portion of your diaphragm, the lateral portion of your diaphragm. We have exercises that, for people that find it really difficult to dissociate from these accessory muscles, this vertical style of breathing, where we can lengthen these accessory muscles and isolate that primary muscle of breathing, your diaphragm.
Interesting. Are you able to dive into a few examples of those that you mentioned? I don't know how much you can share, but
no, it's all good. There's nothing. Yeah, there's no secrets.
Perfect.
If you were to get into child pose, the yoga pose, child pose.
Yeah. Oh wait,
You're down on
put
your
you onto that one.
knees.
Yes.
You're down on your knees, and your arms are out in front, and you're reaching out in front while you're sitting back down onto your heels.
Yeah.
That is going to lengthen some of these accessory muscles to breathe in your shoulders, some of these upper chest muscles, and it actually makes it quite difficult to recruit those muscles on the inhale. And so now you focus into your back, or your posterior rib cages, and in the lateral aspect of your rib cage when you inhale. And you take your time with it, time under tension, a slow, purposeful inhale where you're focusing on expanding the posterior rib cage, if that makes sense.
Yep.
The breathing, when you're doing this, the breathing should be soft, quiet, light, and expansive. And it can feel really restricted when you get someone in this position. It can feel really restricted because if you've been breathing into your upper chest a lot, these accessory muscles, the intercostal muscles in between the rib cage, get really tight, especially around the posterior rib cage.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Don't
No.
overanalyze it. Just jump into child pose, reach out in front, sit back onto your heels, and breathe into your back. And you'll
Easy.
notice straight away. You'll notice straight away. You got to remember, like with a lot of these big muscle groups like chest and shoulder, especially for fighting, you want to be using those for fighting, throwing punches, clinching, and all the rest of that stuff. If you are taxing them with the way that you breathe, they're going to
Mm-hmm.
fatigue much earlier in the fight. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times when we see a fighter reach their sort of hitting the wall in the ring, gassing out, we sort
Mm-hmm.
of think, oh, they're cardio, they're conditioning. And actually, a lot of the time, they have reached their breathing capacity. They have diaphragmatic fatigue. And once that happens, it's a survival thing. Blood flow will be taken or prioritized from the legs to the diaphragm. And then your legs
Gotcha.
start feeling heavy. And the breathing pattern becomes very fast, and this agitates the mind. Over breathing has all sorts of negative effects on performance. If
Yeah.
you're breathing too fast, blows off too
So
much CO2. So you're actually, when you breathe in oxygen, obviously. When you breathe out CO2. If you're hyperventilating, breathing too fast, blowing off too much CO2. It has a whole lot of physiological consequences.
So are you then trying, is there anything you're trying to do to strengthen the diaphragm then, since you mentioned diaphragmatic fatigue, or is it just about managing your breathing so you don't get to that point?
Best thing you can do is get really good breathing mechanics and then take that into all your training. Now
Mm,
you're actually putting your diaphragm under load and having better rate control, having better awareness of your rate of breathing when you're exercising and training. Because without any awareness, it's very likely that you're over breathing, and that becomes a pattern. That becomes an
okay.
ingrained pattern during light intensity, medium intensity, and high intensity, over breathing, even over breathing at rest. And so we work a lot on rate control, matching the intensity of your breathing to the intensity of the exercise is really important and something you can train.
Gotcha.
And so all of these things strengthen your diaphragm. Then we have very specific exercises where we work on the outside edges of your inhale capacity and the outside edges of your exhale capacity.
Interesting. Do you want to dive into some examples of those too?
Yeah, a really simple one. We have a whole bunch, but a really simple one would be to get a timer and aim for, say, you might start on an 8-second inhale and a 12-second exhale. And you only, and those numbers increase, right? 10-second inhale, 14-second exhale, 12-second inhale, 14-second inhale, 16-second inhale. And as you improve your breathing capacity, your ability to expand the rib cage, that becomes easier and easier to hit those numbers. So you just increase the numbers. That's why it's so
Mm.
important, like time under tension, slow inhale over 8 seconds, where you're really focusing on your mechanics of breathing and getting that 360 degrees of rib cage expansion.
Gotcha. And then you mentioned matching the breathing rate to the exercise. So how much are you instructing nose breathing over mouth breathing? Is that something that you're looking at, or is that just something you let naturally happen where the mouth breathing takes over once the intensity increases?
It should be nasal breathing during rest, recovery, and light exercise.
Gotcha.
But you know, it's hard to nasal breathe during high intensity exercise. It is
Yeah.
possible, but you really have to train hard to get there and improve your CO2 tolerance. But there's definitely a place for mouth breathing, right? Especially in fighting high intensity exercise, short bouts of high intensity. You're going to have to use
Yeah.
your mouth, and that's not bad.
Yeah.
What is bad is breathing too fast. It doesn't matter if you're
Gotcha.
using your nose or your mouth. If you're breathing too fast for the given level of intensity of exercise, that's going to tax your energy.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
For have you worked with, I guess, it's probably more prevalent within, actually, it's prevalent in many populations, but the idea of maybe nose blockages, deviated septums, things like that, people that can't breathe well through their nose. Does anything change for you regarding any of these breathing exercises, or is that something that gets worked through, or something that needs to be seen from an actual doctor, medical professional, something like that first before undertaking some of these?
I guess, yeah, it depends on the level of severity, but most of these fighters have got a deviated septum, which impacts their breathing. If something's broken, you should probably get it fixed, but it's not
Yeah.
always, especially in that sport. There's going to be more resistance to airflow,
Hmm.
which is going to make it more challenging. But I think the exercises remain the same, the principles remain the same,
Hmm.
rate control, nasal breathing during rest, recovery, light exercise, they can still do that. There's a little bit more resistance there, but they can still do it and they
Yeah.
can adapt to it. I think what ends up happening is because, once you break your nose, there's more resistance there, they stop using it, and uh, that is not a good idea.
Mm. And that's when you
You know,
start getting those bad
nothing,
habits.
sorry?
That's when they start getting those bad habits.
Yes. If you take a couple of breaths through your mouth now, just without thinking about it, take a couple of
Okay.
breaths in and out through your mouth. Whereabouts in your body is that associated with?
Up here.
Yeah, upper chest. Now take the same breath and just slow it down a little bit through your nose. And what do you notice?
How much lower it was.
Yeah, how much lower in your body it is, whatever that means for anyone listening. Um, but no, you're right. And you
Mm.
feel more resistance to airflow because it's a smaller hole. And so that is pulling the
Mm.
air deeper into the base of your lungs where we want the oxygen, right? You're also, when you breathe through your nose, you're picking up a gas called nitric oxide released from the paranasal sinuses, which is a vasodilator, dilates blood vessels and
Mm.
promotes blood flow. You don't get that when you breathe in through your mouth. If you think just in terms of like, go look at an anatomy book, anatomy and physiology book, when you look at the mouth, there will be no mention in there at all about using the mouth for breathing because it's not designed for breathing. You have
Mm.
teeth and salivary glands and tongue, and it's connected. It's part of your digestive system, the nose for breathing, part of your respiratory system.
Mm.
Um, and if you can take an athlete and first of all, you have to realize that, and I'm sure people listening who have no awareness of this now can sort of start to see that there's a system there. We're just made up of a whole lot of body systems. Human body, a whole lot of body systems, cardiovascular system, nervous system, digestive system. And then we got this breathing system that's just sitting there waiting to be turbocharged. It's waiting to be trained, specifically to be trained. And if there is a deficit in one body system, it'll have a ripple on effect through every other body system. And some of the athletes that we get come into the gym for this training are some of the fittest athletes you can imagine, right? And they
Hmm.
have terrible breathing. How is that possible? It's like, well, you can't be the fittest athlete and have terrible breathing. Yes, you can. You're just putting a lot of pressure on these other systems. You're putting a lot of pressure on your nervous system, on your cardiovascular system. You're going to need longer recovery times. Uh,
Hmm.
it's going to start impacting things like your sleep, injury. And so, yeah, it's possible, but there's a better way to do it. And so if you're
Nice.
not specifically training your breathing, you're not optimizing performance 100%.
Nice. And I want to come into the practical side too, but I wanted to ask you first, respiratory trainers. What's your take on them for just general, I guess, breathing training and performance in that breathwork world?
I think, like with most things, people straight away look for these things out on the periphery, right? Like, external ways to improve performance. And I think they're great, but you've got to get the basics of the system right first. The breathing
Mm.
mechanics, rate control, your ability to use your breathing to elicit a calm state. And that stuff is like, right when we start, we're way back over here, and that stuff is way over here. That's my
Mm.
opinion on it. If you're just starting and you get one of those devices and that's you're off on that, you're probably just adding load to imbalance.
Gotcha. Yeah, that
But
makes
yeah, great
sense.
great tool to add into this whole thing of respiratory muscle training.
Mm. And then for the people listening as
Uh,
well, to try and
sorry,
make,
just
oh,
one
yep, Karen.
sorry
Yep.
to interrupt you. One more thing on that is, what you're actually doing with these devices is adding load to the inhale and exhale, right?
Hmm.
Or nasal breathing during light to moderate exercise, for most people will add more than enough load without adding the device.
Gotcha. So just do that instead. Save your money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think there's a place for them though.
Nice. And I want to try to bring this and try to get some, I guess, a lot of practical stuff for the listeners as well. But you mentioned obviously, you want to take these breathing patterns into your training and to a fight. So I guess how does someone go about starting doing this, and then how do they go about transferring what they're doing to what they're doing within their training?
Yeah, good question. First of all, man, it's just about awareness. Anyone listening to this who hasn't really been aware of it or sort of dabbled in it a little bit, you got to be, awareness alone, just making someone aware of their breathing alone will have a massive impact, because breathing is part of innervated by your autonomic nervous system. You don't need to think about it. You know, I mean, you're breathing 20, 30,000 times a day. You don't need to think about those breaths. But the breathing's unique in that you can take conscious control of it. I don't think there's anything else in the autonomic nervous system that you can actually take that's innovated by the autonomic nervous system that you can take conscious control of, and breathing is that thing, right? So, the first thing is just awareness. And then the second thing is to, like anything, just start with the basics. Start at rest with learning how to better access your diaphragm, improving your breathing mechanics, the way you breathe, just at rest. And then
Hmm.
start taking that over into your training. Have more awareness of your breathing in between bouts of, like you might be doing a 2-minute bout hitting the bag, and then you have a 1-minute break. Well, what should you be focusing on in that 1 minute? What do you have in between rounds in the ring to recover fast? What do you have access to?
Your breath
And it's
or your
like
breathing.
you got access to the coach, you got access to an ice pack and some water.
Hmm.
And so the fastest way is by learning to take control of some of these intricate body systems that are designed to regulate stress and pressure, and to assist in recovering faster. And the breathing is the main one.
Yeah.
And so, you can start training in between bouts of exercise to use your breathing to recover faster. Again, this comes back to, first of all, controlling the rate, making sure that you're breathing in a mechanically efficient way. And then from there's CO2 tolerance training. There's so much in there to unpack. But I think, for most people, just the basics.
Mm. No, for sure. I mean, that's always the best place to start, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wanted to go into as well. There was some, I guess one of the things is most people probably exposed to this world from Wim Hof. I think because that was the big thing that went mainstream around his breathing. If someone was going down that road, would that be suitable for someone to use to almost get started in this world as a guide, or is that something that's a little too far removed?
Uh, well, with the Wim Hof breathing, you're going to be hyperventilating. So
Mm-hmm.
his
You're doing the opposite then.
his motto is just fucking breathe. I think he says. Breathe. And so, not a lot of emphasis on how you breathe. And I think the Wim Hof method is incredible, right? And he's brought so much awareness to just people's
Mm,
breathing. And he's really put it on the map in some respects. So
yeah.
there's a time and place for it. I think as a starting point, if you already have really good breathing mechanics and awareness of your breathing and rate control and all those things, and then you're adding that, then great. But what are you adding it for? Are you adding it to improve your breathing capacity with the Wim Hof stuff? I don't know. Or are you adding it for stress resilience, or to it all depends. It all depends.
Yeah. No, fair enough. And regarding, you mentioned obviously between rounds, so using your breathing to recover, I don't know, maybe doing intervals in the gym or between a fight. Do you have specific recovery postures that you like fighters or any of your other athletes to work with? or is it just based on them?
Nope, it's all based on them. Obviously, you don't want to be slumped over, but most fighters won't do that in between rounds because they're trying to optimize their breathing in between rounds. You hear it all the time. The coach says, breathe, breathe, and they're focusing on their breathing.
Hmm.
Often I'm watching that, and it's not the best style of breathing, but it's always going to be the focus. When you're under the pump, you're always going to focus on your breathing
Hmm.
instinctively. And so, yeah, I mean, like a really good position is just sitting upright, slightly inclined forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be able to open up into your back a bit better. But yeah, it's like I don't really tell them how to sit in between rounds. I think,
No.
hey, it's a good question because I think once you have really good awareness of your breathing, what it does is especially in like that red zone, it makes you not sacrifice your breathing uh, for the exercise. Do you know what I mean by that? For
No,
example, like
explain.
we might see someone like on the air bike, and they're in that
Yep.
red zone, they're flopping around all over the place. Well, you're not going to have
Yep.
good access to your diaphragm. Your breathing's definitely going to be impacted. And so, once you teach the importance of this, you see these guys and girls on the air bike, and they're not flopping all over the place because they're trying to maintain their technique and skill, and part of that is their
Mm.
breathing.
Hmm.
So
No,
I
that
think,
makes.
yeah, just with training the stuff, you're going to get like more awareness around posture.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I think what's interesting as well from a practical standpoint is when you hit that red line, when you're absolutely just you've done a hard round, whatever it is, and your breathing rates increase dramatically, you're trying to bring it down, and all you can focus on is trying to bring it down, but you're not sure maybe should I try to start breathing through my nose straight away? Should I start trying to slow my breath down by breathing in longer or breathing out longer? Is there I don't want to say a protocol, but is there something that someone could focus on to help bring their heart rate or their breathing rate down without being confused about what they should do? I don't know if
Yes.
that question was, yeah.
No, it's a good question. But first of all, it doesn't. When you go back to the corner, you're probably going to be mouth breathing, and that doesn't matter
Hmm. Hmm.
because you can still have. I mean, you still have really good breathing mechanics when you use your mouth
Hmm.
if you train it like that.
Gotcha.
There's a guy I don't know if you've heard of him, Brian McKenzie.
I'm not sure.
Brian McKenzie has come up with something called breathing gears, where you use a breathing gear system to sort of match the intensity of your breathing to the intensity of the exercise. So if anyone's listening, go have a look at that, and he puts it all out there, and that's something you can start implementing to recover faster.
Gotcha.
But we train, with athletes. So we really train this stuff into everything that we're doing. So it just becomes that it is subconscious. They don't even need to
Yeah.
think about it. They go back to the corner. They go through their breathing. That they, it's already trained.
Hmm.
Um, and so because they're training it all the time, um, yeah, it just happens naturally.
Yeah. I want to actually come back to the pool as well around what you're doing with Israel Adesanya in there. I know you mentioned a few things at the beginning around a little bit about the pool, but I wanted to dive into maybe why do the breathing in the pool versus doing it on land? What I guess what extra are you getting out of doing something in there versus outside?
um, yeah, the pool is like it is about the breathing, and yeah, we're looking to improve someone's breathing capacity by using the pool. But if you were doing that, you'd have to use the pool like 3-4 times a week to have like a real effect on CO2 tolerance and improving someone's breathing capacity. This is like the pool. There's so many different facets to the training in the pool, and a big one over everything else is recovery. So getting them
Mm-hmm.
in the pool, you have 360 degrees of compression in the pool from the water.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
like doing your recovery in one of those full body
Yeah.
compression joggings. We have recovery protocols where the water's very calming, man. It's just like
Hmm.
floating in the water or walking in the water. It's so calming. And so we have a whole bunch of different protocols to shift these athletes into a calm state by using the water, floating
Gotcha. Okay.
meditations, do meditation. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, we want to like be able to put them in a stressful environment. So underneath the water, the stress comes in really fast because there's air hunger. And we want them to start utilizing some of the skills that we've taught them around top-down and bottom-up control of stress. Top-down being using their mind to control stress, and bottom-up being able to use their bodies to control stress. And the breathing there, again, is a big one. And so part of that is like getting them in there and looking for those ingrained patterns of behavior when the stress comes in. And an ingrained pattern of behavior when stress and pressure comes in is to overbreathe, to shift the breathing up into the chest. And so you can show someone, it's all right like talking to someone, but to be able to show them in a practical setting is very powerful. And then the other part of the pool training is like mental focus. So we have drills to improve their ability to focus, which in a fight is incredibly important. And so the pool becomes just this practical setting where you can, and even in one session, you can work on recovery, stress tolerance, their mental game, their focus, in one session.
Nice.
And sometimes the athletes will come in and they're just taxed, right? Like you might have something in mind that you're going to train in the pool, adding a little bit of load, but they come in and they're fried. And so then you would just focus on the recovery aspects of the pool training. There's no point in adding any more load to an athlete who is overloaded in terms of their training, because all you're doing is you're loading up their nervous system, and you're keeping them in that sympathetic dominant state, which is terrible for recovery, terrible for their sleep, predisposes them to injury. It's easy to get athletes in the pool and smash them, but it's not what it's about. And in fact, a lot of what we're trying to do in the pool is for them to be able to shift into a really calm state and prolong the easy phase of their breath hold. And we actually very, very seldom go into the difficult phase of the breath hold is on a spectrum, but very rarely do we push it to the point where their eyeballs are popping out. There's no point. There's absolutely no point. These are already people that are very good at biting down and pushing. Right? They're very good at just biting down and going to a dark place. But the real definition of strength is knowing when to push and when to pull back and when to focus on recovery.
Nice. No, that's
so a lot of the training in the pool is strength training for the nervous system, for like their ability to shift into a calm state. And for a lot of people, that's way harder. And like you get someone go and punch the bag for 2 minutes as hard as you can. You go and sit down over there for 2 minutes and focus your mind, which is harder.
I know the second one's definitely hard. I know I'm all over the damn place too. But I want to jump into one more practical thing here for maybe fighters who get very nervous before competition. Because we've talked about recovery stuff, breathing, things they can do maybe at home. But maybe before a fight, they're in the locker room, maybe they're in the stadium or whatever it is, and they need to do something to try and bring themselves down in, I don't know, a short period of time, whatever it is. Do you have anything in place that they could use to do that?
Yes, lots of things. The first thing is to understand that that's normal. What tends to happen when the pressure comes in, it's normally secondary to a thought, an emotion, and we tend to push that away, right? Because why would we want a negative thought or an emotion that elicits a stress state? The first thing is to embrace those feelings, those thoughts, the apprehension, the tension, the fear, the self-doubt, bring it in and change the language. That is the most powerful way to intercept psychological stress. And this is something that you train, right? No point in being like, I'm going to get 5 minutes out and be calm if you haven't trained it. This is why meditation is so powerful, right? Because you're improving your ability to focus. And if you can't focus, your mind is going to be agitated in those high stress, high pressure moments. Being able to focus bridges the gap between stress, pressure, fear, apprehension, tension, and excitement. Being able to convert that into excitement. Now, the key thing here in the moment is your language, your internal dialogue, everything. Hey, I'm having a negative thought. Bring it in. So that's the first thing. change the language. Hey, I'm good here. This is what I've trained for. I'm ready to go. This thought is normal. This feeling is just me getting ready for battle. So straight away you're taking control, right? Man, then there's just some other simple things in these dynamic, in these moments, just conscious control of your breathing, just sitting down, doing a couple of breathing cycles where you prolong the exhale. You're doing the opposite of what would happen with the body stress cycle, which is to upregulate your breathing. When your breathing is soft, quiet, light, and prolonged exhale, you're telling your body to be calm. You're taking control of your body, intercepting your state in real time, your physical and mental state. These are simple things, man.
Mm-hmm.
These are not like difficult things. These are simple things, but the key is you have to train it.
Yeah.
You can't just say, oh, I want to be calm under pressure, and just you got to train it. And repeat exposure is like so important. So if you want to get good at, you look at these guys that have had like 50, 100, 150 fights, right? They go in there and they just seem so calm, right? Repeat exposure. They've worked it out as they've gone along. They've worked it out. They've just kept putting themselves in the fire over and over again. What a great analogy for life. What these guys and girls are doing is such a great analogy for life. They are going towards the stress, pressure, fear, apprehension, tension. They have self-doubt. They have negative thoughts. They get overwhelmed, but they keep going towards it.
Yeah.
Now in life, like, we have a massive problem with people that have a negative relationship with stress, and they avoid it, and they just want to be comfortable all the time. You'll adapt to that. You will adapt to that, and that is called complacent adaptation. That's a terrible place to be.
Yeah.
But it is difficult for some people who have a negative relationship with stress because of things that they've been through in life, where they have been exposed to stress and pressure and things haven't gone well for them. Then they start avoiding it. That's like a big part of my work, is working with those people, not just in sport, but just, again, man, it's just mums and dads, professionals, whatever.
So how are you then breaking that cycle for people like that who maybe have that negative association with stress?
Getting them to understand what's going on. I deal with so many clients who jump on and they say, hey, I've been to see the psychologist and the doctor, and I ask them, has anyone ever explained to you what the stress cycle looks like in your body? Has anyone ever explained to you how the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, has anyone ever explained all of these underlying mechanisms to you? And man, 9 times out of 10 it's no. I don't understand why we're not explaining this stuff. You can't take control if you don't understand. And so with the clients I work with, I've explained it all, so they have a very good visual representation of what stress and pressure looks like physically and mentally. How the body responds to stress, controlled and uncontrolled. Give them a different perspective, a different look at it. Actually, these people that are like have chronic stress and things like anxiety and that have just trained the part of their nervous system, the sympathetic division of their autonomic nervous system, just to switch on like that. Actually, it's strength. They just fire it on like that. What they're struggling with is they get stuck there, and so we teach them how to like grabbing a dimmer switch, being able to turn it up and turn it back down. And so give them some. You got to give people control, and this is where like the breathing is a big part of this. Like teaching people how to use their breathing to elicit a calm state. Teaching people that when they're upregulated, when they're in those moments where they feel stress and pressure and anxiety, whatever, what is actually happening to the breathing? What is happening to the muscular system? Often it tenses up, right? Just relax. So it's all these things that, like, it's all about giving the person control. And that's like the cold water. Like, you get someone that has a negative connotation with stress, they're avoiding it. They might have, again, like anxiety or depression or whatever, and you get them in the cold water and you teach them how to like take control of their breathing, how to take control of their mind, and they're able to do that in there and actually be calm. That has huge ripple-on effects. You then take that and apply it to everything in life. And remember that people with anxiety, like, and uncontrolled chronic stress, a lot of the time they feel like they have no control.
Yeah.
being able to control that stressful environment. Like, there's no more noxious stimulus than 1 degree, 2, 3 degree cold water. It's so powerful for them. They need three things. These people need three things. They need to understand the underlying mechanisms, they need the skills, and then they need practical applications. That's how we learn. I keep saying this on every podcast. We need those three things. And so the people that come to me, give them all three things. But at first, man, it all starts with understanding.
Yeah. No, that's an awesome way to finish off this podcast too, Dave. But for people who want to find you, follow you, see what you're doing, learn more from you, where can they do that?
Yeah, through my Instagram, integrated training. Integrated training. We have 4 pillars of our training: movement, mental game, performance, breathing, and recovery. Also go to our website, wmw.co.nz.
Perfect.
Follow along.
I'll link all that up too.
Follow along, send us a message, whatever.
Perfect. I'll link all that up in the description too when this goes out in a couple of weeks. But thanks for coming on, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate what you're doing, and thank you very much for having me on, and thank you for listening.
All right.